sometimes when you hear the word, people say payoff or reward, those terms usually have a positive connotation. But as it pertains to addiction, they don't necessarily. In other words, my payoff I might be unaware of some sort of experiential or behavioral payoff. And if I still continue the behavior, and it might be a pain-created behavior, and I might even be aware of that behavior, and I'd like to stop that behavior, but I'm getting an unconscious internal biochemical payoff or reward, and therefore it compels me to continue the behavior. So with these more subtle addictions, it could be almost anything now. If I can be addicted to critical thinking, then I could be addicted to cleaning my house. I could be addicted to arguing with my wife. I could be addicted to screaming at my kids. I could be addicted to collecting a certain type of spoon. I mean, it literally can be anything. And so, again, just sort of qualify that. We put them in categories. There's what we say is 5 different types of addictions. There is the ones that we're all familiar with, which would be substance addiction, whether that's food or drugs or alcohol or whatever. Then there's also a lot of addictions, behavioral addictions that we're familiar with. For example, gambling, sex addiction, porn addiction, shopping addiction, even people will use the term like workaholic. So it's becoming a part of the vernacular. It's becoming a part of our collective consciousness. We're starting to broaden our definition of addiction, or things that we see as addiction. And you can see that with these different groups, these different support groups that crop up to support these different addictions. Those are behavioral addictions. And so again, that's any behavior that I engage in or indulge in, I'm compelled to repeat over and over again. And on some level, it creates pain for me or those I love. But then the next level of addiction is what we would call thought addiction. And your thought addiction can be connected to all of your other forms of addiction. But your thought addiction can also be independent. It actually might just be a random, arbitrary thought. Like, for example, maybe I have an addiction to shame. And so my addiction to shame will trick me through thoughts at times to thinking shameful thoughts. And so it could be, again, a completely arbitrary thought, right out of the blue, connected to nothing. I might be driving in my car, and all of a sudden, this picture will pop into my head. And if this picture triggers some sort of response where I react emotionally and say, oh my goodness, get out of my head, and then I notice I'm feeling shame related to that. The addiction, in a way, and I'm talking about it almost like it's a different entity, sort of takes note. Oh, you didn't like that picture. You didn't respond well to that. You gave me some really negative, painful emotions as an opportunity for me to get my drug. And so, to the degree that you respond to that particular thought and then resist that thought will be the degree that addiction, or this part of the brain, will recognize that you're resisting that and knows that it's a jackpot. This is a home run for me. This is a payday for me. I'm going to get huge rewards here. And so it will put that thought into your head more and more often. And I say this not to be offensive in any way, but let's say, for example, you're a priest and you're really a good person, and you're really a loving guy, and you're really balanced and stable. And you know some of the negative stigma around the priesthood and things that have happened around pedophilia or so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, you're shocked and surprised, but you have this thought. And you see this altar boy and you have this thought, and you're like, that's not me. I don't think like that. I'm not a pedophile. I'm not into boys. And all of a sudden you go home and you're feeling guilt and shame around this particular thought. And what you'll find is that thought then, sort of this idea, what you resist persists. And so now, sadly, that thought starts to come back more and more frequently. At what point, when a thought like that starts to show up again and again, do you start to maybe suspect, why am I thinking that? Why does that thought keep coming back? Maybe I do feel a certain way. Maybe I do have proclivities that I was unaware of. Maybe I am sick. Maybe I am a pervert. Maybe I'm disgusting. Shame on me. And every one of those questions, every one of those thoughts that you have about yourself is some sort of a biochemical reward to recreate pain states that you may have become addicted to somewhere earlier in your life.